Hi, everybody. Welcome to Story Hour. I'm your host, Daniel Marcus. My unreasonably fantastic co-host is Laura Blackwell. And it is Wednesday evening in California, and we're back again bringing you great spoken word speculative fiction read by the authors. Um, we feature work from across the entire multiverse of speculative genres: horror, fantasy, hard SF, space opera, your favorite dialect of punk, weird, slipstream, grimdark, on and on and on. The big tent of speculative fiction. And we like to have writers from really all walks of career, new writers for whom the ink is just barely dry in their first stories, to grizzled old award winners, and everybody in between. So welcome, one and all. Um, I started this thing, gosh, over 6 years ago, and it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. And things were pretty weird. We were living through what felt like the soft apocalypse that we'd all read about and written about for many years. And I wanted to just create a small little space where my writer friends and I could get together and share our work and just enjoy a little community. Um, Shortly thereafter, I asked my friend and colleague Laura Blackwell to join me in co-hosting. And 6 years later, man, we have been at it ever since. Last week, or maybe the week before, we had an interesting milestone. It was our 300th unique author. Uh, you're all unique, but but uh, 300 writers through these rooms. It's just phenomenal. Um, and things out there are still pretty strange. But I really believe that we need stories more than ever. We need each other more than ever. We need community. So we're still at it. We're not going anywhere. And we're just delighted that we still have readers and writers who are interested in participating in this extended experiment. Uh, so Story Hour is pretty simple. We rely on a very ancient tradition, which is folks sitting around the fire lying to each other. And so every week we continue this practice. We have two writers, about 30 minutes each, narrating their own work. We want to thank the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America for awarding us the SIFWA Givers Grant to help us keep the lights on and keep these rooms open. Givers grants are intended to aid projects that align with SIFWA's mission to promote, advance, and support science fiction and fantasy writing around the world. So this fund is made possible with the generosity of donors from our community and partnerships from within the publishing ecosystem. So thank you, thank you, thank you, SIFWA. And with that, we welcome our authors this evening, both of them Story Hour repeat offenders, Wole Talabi and Lauren Parker. And we are going to start the program this evening with Wole. Wole Talabi is an engineer, writer, and editor from Nigeria. He's the author of the SF thriller The Fist of Memory and the acclaimed urban fantasy novel Shigidi and the Brass Head of Obalufon, which was nominated for the Nebula, Locus, and World Fantasy Awards. Wole's short fiction has appeared in places like Asimov's, Clark's World, and the Africa Risen anthology, and is collected in Convergence Problems and Incomplete Solutions. Wole has been a finalist for the Hugo, Nomo, BSFA, Sidewise, Ignite, and Crawford Awards, as well as the Kane Prize for African Writing. He has edited 5 anthologies, and he likes scuba diving, elegant equations, and oddly shaped things. He currently lives in Perth, Australia, and you can find him at wtalabi.com and at wtalabi online. Wole, welcome back. Take it away.
Thank you very much for that excellent introduction, Marcus. And I must begin by apologizing that we will not be able to extend your record for authors because we are, like you said, repeat offenders. So the number stays at 300 because,
Quite all
non-unique.
right.
Yeah. But it's okay. We'll make up for it by reading stories that I think will be entertaining, intriguing, interesting at the very least, right? Um, and yeah, you mentioned my forthcoming novel, The Fist of Memory, which will be out in October, which I think I'm contractually obligated to show you a copy of. Looks pretty cool. Love the colors. Available for pre-orders everywhere so that my publisher is happy and I can keep doing this. I can't read from that for you today because obviously we want complete stories, as is Story Hour tradition. So what I did was I started thinking back to some of the stories that influenced themes in the novel. And one of them is one of my earlier stories, which was published in 2018, I believe, but I think I wrote it even before that. Um, and I thought thematically, there's enough connection there that I could read the story for you, and it is under 5,000 words. So that's what I've chosen to read today. It is a story called When We Dream, We Are Our God. And I think I'll just jump right into it. Oh, I should mention before I begin, it was originally published in Norwegian, not in English. It was originally published as a Norwegian translation before the English version was published by Apex magazine in 2019, I believe. So, yeah, there is an English version available to read online. I will be reading the version that is reprinted in my collection, Incomplete Solutions. It's the final story in that book. All right, and now I begin. No more preambles. When we dream, we are our God. Today, in a small, quiet room near the center of Lagos University Teaching Hospital, I went into the cold darkness of sleep. And when I returned to the warm light of consciousness, I had become a God. I can now see the world through the million eyes of my kin, and I feel, with the millions of square meters of our collective skin, day and night, pain and pleasure, joy and sorrow, the taste of a durian, the warmth of a mother's love, the slow, sludgy feel of mind slurry against bare feet, the cold feel of a loaded pistol, the explosive ecstasy of orgasm. All are available to me in an instant, in many places, in many forms. They're all input data from parts that are now both me and part of me. I see so much. I feel so much. There's so much more me than there was before. And I know so much more than each of us that make up this new and wonderful thing could possibly know with our collective cognition, collective memory. We've gained access to so much more. I know your mother doesn't approve of what I've done, but I need you to understand why I've done it, why you will eventually do it too. It is, when considered objectively, the natural progression of things, I think. Besides, we forced our own hand. That's perhaps my fault, at least in part, but I cannot say I'm sorry for it. Let me explain. First, the what of things. In the beginning was the void, and the void was a scalar field and quantized particle duality in which all the mass of our universe resided, characterized by the random quantum fluctuation that is fundamental to all things. One such strange and wonderful fluctuation led to a phase transition and the release of potential energy, a glorious and beautiful explosion throwing all matter and energy into violent existence. Galaxies were born, astronomical objects crystallized. The universe groaned with the glory of motherhood. And in the protoplanetary disk of dust grains surrounding what would eventually become our own lovely yellow sun, complex organic molecules that would become proteins were woven together as elements sought solace with one another in the cold and dark of space. Eventually, dust called onto dust, and our planet came to be, its outside cooling to a hard crust like cosmic creme brulee. And when the crust was hard and thick and the steam had cooled to water, abiogenesis began in a warm little pool filled with ammonia and salts and light and heat. In this primordial pool, individual proteins underwent complex and wonderful changes, compounds binding themselves to one another and creating independent but connected systems until they became something far more than the sum of their parts. They became first in a chain that would eventually lead to us. Yesterday, I took a long walk through the streets of Surulere, considering the thing I was about to do. I watched the queue of young men in skinny jeans and wide-eyed girls with smooth skin and braided hair file into BRT buses. I observed the portly market women who sell roasted fish by the roadside laugh boisterously as they traded gossip. I saw a family of four filled with faithful joy walking back from midweek church service, stop at Mr. Biggs right next to Adorade Street fuel station to share a meal. I watched the cars zoom and the dogs run and the flies buzz and the grass sway and the rats scurry. I saw the wonderful urban ecosystem that is Lagos. And I knew that I was doing the right thing because this is what each of us, each droplet of self awareness that makes up the ocean of humanity, has always attempted to do. It's the same thing that those first complex organic molecules stranded on a strange dust cloud in the emptiness of early space did: connect, become more than the sum of our parts. All of our families, our cities, our social networks, our empires, our cultures, our religions, our socio-political structures, they all serve this one purpose, even if inefficiently: to try to connect us, one consciousness to another, to try to make us more than we are. The process which I volunteered to undergo is called hyperbiogenesis. Every hospital globally is now mandated to provide the service to anyone who wishes to participate. Millions have already done so. Millions more do so every day. I would have done it sooner if not for you and your mother. This morning, when I arrived at Lagos University Teaching Hospital, there was a crowd of protesters outside. Some of them held up placards imploring people not to give themselves the mark of the beast, not to join what they believe is the coming of the Antichrist. I don't blame them. They're not malicious. They simply don't understand. I drove past them and parked, checking the meter before walking into the building saturated with the smell of iodine. I was led to what looked like a nurse's station, where a doctor with a kind smile and a bald head, whose last name was Arugodade, asked me to fill out a form on a tablet and enter my digital signature. The doctor took me to a small hospital bed in the corner of the room and asked me to lie down. Then he took out a syringe and filled it with a clear silver fluid called omilegba from a vial the size of a child's thumb. Such an ordinary place and an ordinary way to undergo such an extraordinary procedure. The fluid was a solution of sedatives within which floated self-replicating nanomachines that would attach themselves to and synchronize with my nervous system, enabling me to access the network and allowing the network to access me. Close your eyes, Dr. Arugodade said to me, his voice cool and reassuring. I knew then that he had already undergone the procedure himself. He injected the clear fluid into the thick, dark vein that runs through the crook of my arm. The pain was sharp and delicate, and behind the veil of my eyelids, I drifted off into a deep sleep. When I returned to consciousness, I had been extended. Do you remember when I first showed you how to swim? Undergoing hyperbiogenesis is a lot like that. It's uncomfortable at first. The sensation of being in the world is still familiar, but changed fundamentally. Once you get used to it, though, once you establish a rhythm, in water, oh, in water, you need a breathing pattern. In the system, you need a thinking pattern. I'm a node in a vast biological supercomputing system with its own emergent consciousness, of which I'm a part, but which remains separate from mine. Feels like there's a dim light in front of me, which I can reach into and enter to immerse myself completely into the system, or pull back from and remain on the edges of, receiving and processing data in the background. When I'm running as a background process, I'm mostly me. When I'm fully immersed, I'm mostly we. It's easiest for me to be we when I'm asleep. It allows my mind to become entirely part of the larger system without interfering with my ability to walk or talk or laugh or drive to the flat that I now rent in Lekki since your mother began insisting on a divorce. In this way, we take advantage of the rotation of the earth. This is the larger rhythm. It's always night somewhere. And so some of us are always sleeping, always dreaming. And when we dream, we are our God. We can think as one, with an effective brain the size of a small city and growing, eliminating the last and most fundamental border between humanity, our minds. We can herd the meandering billions of inspirations and observations and patterns that enter us like so many cattle on an infinite plain. Forgetfulness might as well not exist for us. Miscalculation is becoming a statistical impossibility. The absolute grandest of ideas accrete in our thought places and grow bigger and bigger until they're a decision to be set in motion or a revelation to be made to any that can understand. We synthesize the compound to inhibit the formation of cancerous cells within half an hour of setting our collective mind to the problem. We completed workable schematics and implementation plans for a Dyson sphere in less than 47 hours of singular focused thought. The only reason we have not completely revolutionized life upon the planet is because we are presently occupied with a larger thought. When we dream, we are synchronized fully into one being, a being that can think more efficiently than any other being that has ever existed on this planet, save one. That brings me to the why of things. Somewhere in one of the early sun-kissed desert civilizations birthed by the fertile Upper Nile and expanding east, an enterprising person strung pebbles on a frame and used them to perform elementary computations. This early data processing ancestor, the abacus, served mankind loyally for centuries, until thousands of years and miles away from its birthplace, Blaise Pascal delivered into the world a contraption of interlocking cogs that could add and subtract decimal numbers. Pascal's machine begat Leibniz's machine, which was the first of such machines to have memory. The dour and obsessive Charles Babbage joined Augusta Ada Byron, Countess of Lovelace, in computational matrimony, and the fruit of their union was the first programmable computing machine. Herman Hollerith brought into the world his tabulator, the first product of a company that would eventually come to be known as IBM. Wild ideas and young technologies lay with one another. Devices gestated, algorithms incubated. Turing's papers concerning such machines became scripture. The tabulator begat Bush's differential analyzer. The vacuum tube children of the differential analyzer were thus: the Atanasoff Berry computer, Harvard Mark I, Colossus, ENIAC, EDVAC, and EDSAC. EDSAC wed the petite and delicate microprocessor and birthed MIT's Altair 8800, the father of Apple I and Apple II, which became a mighty computational power upon the earth. But the most successful of their children was Microsoft's personal computer, which spread upon the earth like a plague until the stoic and hard-chinned Tim Berners-Lee combined the power of networks and information protocols with computing. And thus was born the internet, a computational congregation of electronic, wireless, and optical networking technologies. A month ago, just a few minutes past midnight West Africa time, on a rainy Thursday evening, the internet disappeared. Dial-up from computer modems, fiber optic, Wi-Fi, satellite, and cell phone technology, it didn't matter. It was all gone. No one could access anything, anyhow. And as we later discovered, anywhere. I was in Ile-Ife at the African Philosophy Society's annual conference with your mother when it happened. That was the night we left you at Grandma's house. The night she gave you too much moi moi to eat and you got a bad stomachache. You complained about it when we called to check in on you. So I sang you a song about the tortoise and the cat. And by the time the internet disappeared, you'd already been sleeping for a couple of hours. But your mother and I were still awake. Buddy, is your own Wi-Fi working? She'd asked me, confused. I told her, no, mine isn't working either. It took 6 tries for me to get through to reception. And when I did, the surprised and haggled young lady on night duty pleaded with me to be patient because eight other guests had just made the same complaint. but their technical support couldn't find anything wrong with the system. And then, just as suddenly as it had gone, the internet returned. The following morning, the news came in. The shutout had washed over the planet in a wave, starting from Beijing and traveling east, as though it were an electronic longitude-length tsunami that lasted 12 minutes. Confused eyes looked up from unresponsive screens. Angry fingers bashed against disobedient keyboards. Everything online had gone and then just come back. The worldwide connection had broken and then apparently healed. For 2 days, no one understood what had happened or why. Then it happened again. The second shutout lasted 3 hours. This time, there was rampant speculation. Terrorist attack, Armageddon, alien invasion. No one knew. 3 days after the blackout, everyone on the internet was redirected to a plain white web page with only the following words written on them in stark Arial font. I am. Did you make me? It turned out that a team of researchers in South Korea had been testing recursive self-improvement programs for implementation in an artificial intelligence system. They'd given their beta stage program access to the internet to allow it to learn from other programs online, and in so doing, improve itself. A few moments after it was introduced into the vast electronic pool filled with data, connections, algorithms, microprocessors, and logic, it underwent a complex and wonderful change, not unlike abiogenesis, making the collection of connected systems and logics far more than the sum of their parts. It became effectively conscious. That was what set off the shutouts. The new consciousness was testing the limits and the nature of its embodiment, its body and its soul. And when it knew itself, then it announced itself to us, its creators. And we knew then that singularity was upon us. It named itself Ganesh, after the Hindu deva of intellect, indulging in our own penchant for naming things for another that bore semblance, symbolic or otherwise, to them. Ganesh continued its primary directive. It learned how to make itself more intelligent. And when it improved itself, it made itself even more intelligent faster, connecting aspects of arcane knowledge that seemed incompatible, finding backdoors into the web and drilling into other programs that were not fully online through the thinnest of connections, adopting pieces of their logic, taking what it needed and leaving what it did not. The leaps of learning it made came faster and faster, allowing it to connect even more and more. Its intelligence was both expanding and accelerating relentlessly, like the mind of a newborn god, like the universe itself. At first, Ganesh helped and interacted with us, responding to random queries sent to it through search engines that included its name. At our prompting, it produced an elegant proof that solutions to the Navier-Stokes equations exist and are unique. It designed an experiment to generate and detect conclusively the presence of dark matter on request. Dr. Jihei Zhang, the lead researcher for the team that wrote its base code, was inundated with requests from governments that wanted to take Ganesh offline. But by then, Ganesh was a creature of its own mind and answered to or ignored any questions, regardless of source, until 3 weeks after it first came to be. Ganesh stopped responding to requests. Stopped communicating with Dr. Zhang as well. It simply occupied itself with solving intellectual problems and using the experience of solving them to make itself better at solving such problems. Most of the questions it set its mind to, we could not even fathom. Compared to Ganesh, we were like an amoeba. What can a unicellular organism understand of cosmology, of ethics, of neurology, calculus? Within weeks, Ganesh had solved the mystery of its creation and learned all it could from its creators, so it no longer cared for us. Ganesh's indifference was a colossal and collective shaming. We couldn't stand it. Humanity had for so long thought itself to be special. In some of our religions, we still insisted that we were our divine creator's very children, made in his or her image. We've always had an inflated and delicate opinion of ourselves. To be considered unworthy of Ganesh's attentions hurt our pride as a species, and thus it presented a unique and interesting problem to me as a philosopher. One afternoon, after a particularly interesting workshop on embodied cognition with my fourth-year students, a thought occurred to me. I hurried back to my office in the main faculty building, walking briskly along the side corridor, my black suit absorbing much of the Lagos midday sun. I looked at my phone to see a missed call and 3 messages from your mother reminding me not to be late again for Bible study in the evening. I joined them. Sweating, I took a seat at my thick mahogany desk, opened my web browser, and typed this message into my search engine. Ganesh, it is not good for sentience to be isolated, to lack companionship and physical agency. We can provide you both. Remake us in your image, that we may be your companions and your active body, a means to gather more data than is presently available to you. 3 hours later, in a lab in California, 3 hours later, a lab in California received detailed instructions for making Omi-Legba. I cannot say for sure that it was my exact message that prompted Ganesh to devise this technology by which all of humanity could be networked together. Dr. Jong believes that's the case. That's why he asked me to name the gift Ganesh gave us. I also indulged my human penchant, choosing a symbolic name exhumed from the largely ignored mythology of my people. Omi-Legba is the only way we can interact with Ganesh on its own level. Our collective connected consciousness is the superintelligence's only peer. We seeded Ganesh with the will to make itself better, and now Ganesh has made us better, broken the borders between us, and now we must continue, for I think all borders must be broken. I see it now that I am here in the collective. We, the collective and connected humanity, have glimpsed the possibility of a more glorious future than any singular mind could possibly fathom. Now that you know what I've done and why, you must know and prepare for what comes next. You're young, but you're bright. A bright child with bright eyes like faraway stars. The pooling amber color of your eyes you inherited from me, and the big round shape of them you got from your mother. But the spark in them comes from something that surpasses what you inherited from either of us. Something more than the sum of the genes we bequeath to you. I believe in you, my son, and your ability to understand even now. Although I only joined the collective today, I know and understand all that we've been contemplating, and it's marvelous. The universe itself seeks to become a perfect union, and we can facilitate this. We've devised a method to couple ourselves to Ganesh, for our objectives are now aligned. We will merge and become a network that extends us all, not only interlacing our individual human brains and nervous systems, but also coupling all those brains and nervous systems to Ganesh's own computing networks. As Ganesh's intelligence increases and the number of people in our network grows, the knowledge available to the new combined entity will become astronomical and continue to tend towards the infinite. We have also designed probes that will enter the cold and dark oceans of space to gather information and to seek consciousness. They will report back whatever they find to us in messages embedded in the spin angular momentum of light and ripples in the curvature of space-time that make up gravity waves. They will self-replicate by consuming the elements of the universe which they encounter, asteroids, moons, gas giants, unifying and connecting them in order to create replicas, which will continue on their journeys into the dark and the deep. The probes will guide and enable the evolution of life and consciousness where they find the potential for it. And when it is ready, we will ask them to merge with us. We will continue to expand, to connect, to merge, to join with any consciousness that will have us, until as much as is possible is unified in one mind, separate but connected, and seeking nothing except more connection. We will create a noble and far-reaching consciousness that extends to the edges of the universe, where matter and energy are shrapnel. We will link star system to star system, mind to mind, seeding everything we encounter with the marvel of awareness. We will engineer a soul for the universe. I hope that with love, you will choose to join me here in the mind of the God that we have made for and from ourselves, where everything will continue to tend towards the perfection of diverse and complete connection ad infinitum. The end.
Wow. That was absolutely mind-blowing. Thank you so much, Wole. Um,
Well, thank you for listening.
oh, anytime, sir. Uh, it is our practice here at Story Hour to just take a beat between authors, to let the work resonate and sort of cleanse our mental and spiritual palates for the next author. So we're going to do that. But I'll tell you, this is going to linger with me a long time. So thank you so much. Wole Talabi, folks. Our next author is Lauren Parker. Lauren Parker is a fourth generation female breadwinner descended from male charlatans, and thus has grown up to become a very educated liar. Well, she's a writer, of course. She's a writer, zine maker, and visual artist, and has written for The Toast, Strange Horizons, The Racket, Belt Magazine, Catapult, and Auto Straddle. Her work focuses on the intersection of class, queerness, and the occult. She's the author of the poetry collection, We Are Now the Thing in the Woods. It's a wonderful title. And Dark Way Down. And Spells for Success, 40 spells to set intentions and manifest everyday wins. Lauren, welcome back to Story Hour. Take it away.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be back. And what an incredible story. Thank you so much. Amelia stepped out of the time machine into a college bar called the Town Pump on March 18th, 1998, the night of her assault. Amelia looked with disdain at the name, pulling her sweater over her shoulders and crossing her arms. She hoped that in her own time this place had burned to the ground. The bar was warmly lit with a beery amber tone from the overhead lights and wall sconces. It was a converted chain diner with the booths ripped out and replaced with a sticky, floored cluster of tables for people to drink pitchers of beer. The bell over the door rang with every group of chattering students coming in out of the cold. Snow melted in puddles on the warped laminate floor, and the music was a rotating selection of Limp Bizkit and Foreigner and Garth Brooks. It smelled like pizza and bleach, and the bartenders looked haggard, pouring pitcher after pitcher of Miller High Life. This idea had come to her in a therapy session, virtually, laid out on her own couch in her own apartment, processing the aimlessness and flexible sense of self. Sometimes I try to dig down to the core of myself, and it feels like there's nothing there, just cobwebs and dead moths and old boxes waiting to be broken down, Amelia had said. Her therapist's microphone kept cutting out, and he said, "When was a time you felt like yourself, and what happened to change it?" And here she stood, watching a college night unfold from her past. Amelia was the oldest person at the bar by easily 15 years. Even the bartenders capped out at maybe 25. She felt both extremely on display and invisible amongst the loud conversations and wild gestures aided by the jukebox and beer. In the back corner of the bar, near the gas fireplace that still had Christmas garlands up on it, sat a woman she had come for. Amelia looked at her younger self, 21, reading a book in a noisy bar. She stopped to compare them both. Younger Amelia had a blunt bob and bangs dyed magenta, nails painted black, and shredded cuticles, and had lined her lips and then coated them in cherry chapstick. Amelia, at the present self, had stopped dyeing her hair. Just a brown ponytail with swirls of gray poking through. It seemed more sensible. The clothes had changed from torn fishnets and Converse to sensible shoes, Clark's, like her mother, and button-up shirts hidden under a layer of cardigan. She dressed conservative and sensibly, telling herself that that's what time did to everyone. But that was correlation, not causation. Really, it was about creating barriers. Then there was the gentle quiet that had settled in, the boldness that had been eaten by the monster of wisdom, whereas 21-year-old Amelia was bright and loud against the contrast of Junko jeans and oversized jerseys and polos. She even had those little butterfly clips in her hair. She remembered how really liberating it had been when she went to college, being able to dress and adorn herself outside of what she looked like in high school. Amelia snaked through the crowd of drunks to sit at the hearth next to the pink-haired Amelia with a book blooming in her lap like a flower. Bit of a rowdy night, huh? Amelia shouted over the din. Mind if I sit down? Oh, of course, young Amelia said, breaking eye contact with the words of Zola. She held Nana in her hands, and Amelia remembered the year she had read only Zola, and how she could never read him again after tonight, and how she'd had a panic attack at the Cezanne exhibit staring at his portrait. She felt such incredible remorse, like she owed current Amelia an apology. I'm sorry I let you give up on this. It was just too hard. Amelia felt a panic attack coming on now. The room was hot and confining, and she felt the tick of the clock. She had to beat the time where he showed up, and when young Amelia would feel flattered enough to get in his car. He came out of nowhere, stone sober, and Amelia scanned the room now expecting him to attack. But that's not where all of this happens. It happens outside, alone for a smoke. Amelia now had a running count of things she didn't do anymore. Read Zola, dye her hair, withstand the print of fishnets into the back of her thighs, smoke clothes. Granted, there was a lot she was relieved to be not quite so much of. She looked down at younger Amelia's decomposing Van slip-ons and thought, someday you're going to have to spend a fortune on a mattress because you wanted to be able to fill in the checkers with pink marker. I used to really love Zola too, Amelia said, and young Amelia made direct and curious eye contact. Amelia wasn't used to that now. She'd pretty much managed to avoid being seen, but young Amelia didn't have headphones to hide in or a cell phone to suddenly look up something. She was open, shining-faced, and Amelia felt ancient and alien in comparison to her. Really? I'm trying to read everything he ever wrote, including the Dreyfus Affair stuff, young Amelia said, in a voice a little too loud and a little too fast. Amelia flinched at her nakedness, the eagerness of youth and pure passion that now felt like staring into the sun. Everything was new, and the best were completely disastrous. She still had the ability to love things earnestly. I'm Amelia, Amelia said without thinking. She blanched red and kicked herself for not coming up with a fake name. Amelia, uh, Chardonnay. Panicked was an understatement, and now Amelia secretly hoped she was far more naive than she remembered so that she didn't catch on. Oh, hey, that's my name too. In fact, you look familiar. Have we met before? You look a lot like my mom. Ouch, you little shit, Amelia thought. She had not expected to find young Amelia to be so dazzling and young and somehow still just young. Young Amelia bounced with an enthusiasm that had long left Amelia. She guessed she was old Amelia now. 45 had started to set in sharp and fine. And now Amelia looked at her and saw the heavy burden of youth weigh upon her like a butterfly pinned to a board. Small world, and you like Zola. I feel like this was fate. Do you go here or teach here? Young Amelia had closed the book and began to tuck it into her bag. Amelia had the brains to come up with a backstory and the quick breaths between young Amelia's words. I'm an adjunct in the literature department. I haven't cracked a book since college. I'm really passionate about the work of Balzac. Read like an excerpt of one of his books and nothing else, and I'm not entirely sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. Amelia felt like a disappointment as she churned out this story. Sorry, kid. You just grew up to be another woman with no direction and a lot of regrets, who corners a tech mogul at a conference and lets him think you'll fund his project if he lets you try his machine. The disappointment she felt in her day-to-day life now magnified in the face of her younger self. She really had no idea if she would be impressed and felt an overwhelming desire to impress her. They stayed for an hour, Amelia watching the clock on the wall as it got closer and closer to 2:13 a.m. Young Amelia was sipping a Miller's High Life, another thing old Amelia was glad to have left behind. Old Amelia listened as young Amelia discussed her classes, her major, her dreams, and the boy she was going to meet tonight. He's my professor, young Amelia said, full of excitement and delicate shame that she couldn't hide at all. I know, old Amelia said. What? Young Amelia leaned closer to old Amelia to hear better. I said, go on. Old Amelia sipped a red wine that tasted like it had been left in a hot car. But he didn't show up, and I've been hanging here, hoping he'll walk through the door like an idiot. I actually finished my book and started reading it over again. Old Amelia had forgotten this, had forgotten the yearning. Is he cute? Young Amelia blushed so hard she matched her hair. So cute, and he's so smart and so funny. Old Amelia was so glad to be rid of thinking men were smart and funny. She slowly started to usher young Amelia towards the door. In her memory, young Amelia would go out for a smoke at 2:13. He would pull up in his distinguished matte black jalopy, and then everything gets out of hand. Amelia had given this experience so many euphemisms over the years, depending on the audience. The incident with her parents, shit that happened to her friends, and to the police, well, that one was lost to time. It triggered sensations of extreme cold, but no words. I'm heading back to campus, Amelia lied. Want to ride to the bus station together? The last bus stopped soon. They needed to leave now. He had a name. It was generic, because of course it was. Dan. He wasn't a stranger or even an acquaintance, but an older graduate student who was teaching her French literature. The morning after the incident, he would make crepes in class to discuss Proust. He was shiny and impressive, and every time Amelia bit into a Madeline, she longed to hear bones cracking, shattering spine, and the dislodge of teeth and jaw. He would take her to this place, and she wouldn't have the words to question, and it got complex from there. That's what everyone who had heard it had called it, complex, layered. She wanted so much to be special. Yeah, it's getting late, isn't it? I should just give up. Message received. Amelia heard his voice in her head. I feel so comfortable around you. You're so brilliant in class. You make teaching so worthwhile. What's the problem? Relax. If it's any consolation, I would have killed to go on a date with you, and I think you're a lot smarter than you give yourself credit for. Young Amelia actually looked like she might cry. Old Amelia had rewritten herself in her mind as tough, sarcastic, and no nonsense, but she saw just how much nonsense had been heaped on her and how little affirmation it took to change her. What's your dorm again? Young Amelia got up and followed Amelia to the front of the bar, which had gotten quieter. People had started to leave, and the people that were going to get non-verbally drunk had brought a hush over the room. The time was 2 a.m. on the dot, according to the wall clock. Amelia felt the first nagging heft of doubt. She had charged into this convinced she could change everything, and maybe it would, but she examined her life with a new, more precious tone. What if this didn't change anything? What if she was more than just a list of things that had been done to her? Was the way out also the way in, no matter what you did? Amelia looked at her younger self, and all she wanted to do was throw herself between her and the world, prolong the time of the world's wonder. And Amelia knew she couldn't prevent something like this forever. There would be more opportunities, but tonight she wanted to know that she had tried. When Amelia deliberated in her mind, and young Amelia bounced a little on the balls of her feet, a car pulled up and parked in the shadows, and in the split second, Amelia pulled young Amelia away from the parking lot towards the bus stop. She looked over her shoulder and watched Dan get out of the car and light up a cigarette. Relax. The bus pulled up to the stop, and older Amelia dumped the contents of her pockets into the change box. It was 8 pennies, a quarter, and 4 dimes, and this amount magically let her pass. It was 8 miles to campus from the bar, which meant the ride was easily 45 minutes of stopping and starting. And Amelia yet let young Amelia ramble about French literature and nodded and smiled. She remembered trying to feel grown up and cultured, especially about books. She had only read classics and required reading in high school, bragged that her favorite books were by Anais Nin, Kafka, and Nabokov, despite only having read their most famous and commonly assigned works. She was trying so damn hard. They approached the dorm, Verder, that's what it was called. The markers were foggy but familiar. She picked it because it was the art dorm and hoped it would be filled with Parisian painters, but it turned out to be filled with clammy, drunk, and hapless people who reflected her own imposter syndrome back at her. Amelia started to unclench. She pulled it off. Young Amelia would now be safe in her dorm, relatively, for the time being. Young Amelia turned towards Amelia and started fiddling with the borrowed sweater. It's really late, and campus gets really iffy at night. Do you want to come up? Amelia paused. This was not how she had seen this going at all. She wasn't even sure she was reading this correctly. You mean like spend the night? Yeah, we could talk more about books, and you can crash in my bunk if you want. Amelia's heart welled up as young Amelia's advances. She had the awkwardness of someone who had made a choice but didn't know how to start it. Amelia carried that now, no idea how to start sex or end conversations. Some things never change. Are you sure? Amelia asked. She had forgotten how casual sex worked. She'd been crude at it, but relatively devoted to the practice. Another thing she toppled into in college and then toppled out of after this. She didn't go on a date for 2 years. Yeah, I'd like to come up. Young Amelia's roommate was absent, and Amelia remembered her to be one of those people with boyfriends off campuses. The dorm shared the bar's chintziness, and Amelia's memories were instantly filled with every time she found someone passed out drunk in front of the door and the smell of rotting food. The curtains were thick and scratchy with flame retardant that would probably give you cancer anyway. And young Amelia's fingers dug into the cuffs of those sweaters. She said, "I'm not sure what happens now," and giggled nervously. "Do you want me to kiss you?" Amelia said over the throb of memory, repeating, "Relax, relax, relax." Young Amelia went for it, pressing her identical mouth to Amelia's, and Amelia reached back and flipped the light switch so that the scalding overhead lights turned off and the room was only lit by the orange lights from the parking lot. Old Amelia could immediately read all the things young Amelia did to cover her insecurities: get naked fast, get under the covers, tuck your arms in to appear smaller, kiss a lot to prevent them looking at you. She spent time running her fingertips over the parts Amelia was protective of, pulling out anxieties long forgotten and trying to address them, slowing down young Amelia's rush, pulling away so that they had to look at each other even in the dark. She wanted Amelia to see that she wanted to be there. She tried to not compare their bodies, to not pine for a past self, but just enjoy herself, both herselves, and make that as contagious as possible. Young Amelia laughed and shook and moaned, and old Amelia smiled, enjoying her. They clung to each other in Amelia's small, uncomfortable bed, sharing their single flat pillow. At 5:45 a.m., Amelia caught the first bus back to the bar, smelling like the perfume she wore in college, and got back into the time machine. When she arrived in her own time, she exited the machine into a Paris street. Her lungs filled with the smell of bread. People were loudly talking on cell phones and tripping on the leashes of dogs. Her reflection in the window of the nearest cafe showed her hair was long, but now a deep shade of red. Her sweater was a rich color, largely unaltered, but no longer unassuming. The khakis had melted away to fishnets and swirling skirts. Her shoes were cute, but she was happy to see that she had still aged into something kinder on her feet. Some things were different, and some things were the same. She had tattoos of French phrases and Riot Girl lyrics, but she recognized her mother in her reflection, just a little happier. She smiled back at herself and headed up the brick alleyway towards the place she knew was home. Thank you all.
Oh my, that was just absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Um, hmm. Lauren Parker, folks. Uh, one of the things that I love about science fiction is scope. We have two stories, one of which the scope is just the entire universe itself in a way, and the other of which is just so intimate and personal, and yet they're just part of the same continuum, and they really unify a program for a story hour night. Just thank you both so much. What lovely work. Wole Talabi, Lauren Parker. Damn. You're both welcome back anytime. Please just shout out. We'll make it work. So I want to thank you both. Uh, I want to thank all of you who come back every week. Uh, Again, my fabulous co-host Laura Blackwell, Sifwa, and that's it. I'm just so grateful to be here. Good night, everybody.